Sexual assault is a growing problem in our society. However, there are preventative measures we can take in order to combat it.
For the new people here, we are dedicated to protecting children and minors, specifically females, from sexual harassment. We sincerely hope to accomplish educating our viewers on the different resources and hopefully prevent this problem.
In this episode, we will be discussing preventative and defensive measures in order to avoid sexual violence. I am Jocelyn.
And I'm Wendy.
And we are Her Story.
So, to start off, one of the main reasons why this problem occurs would be on how society and social media has contributed to this problem. And this can be seen in the sexualization of women, especially on young teenagers, especially on platforms like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc. And first off, since these teens are just developing and are very new to all of this, anything that they see, they will do. And this includes things that they will typically see on social media will be things like body dysmorphia. And this doesn't come just from the social media itself, but actually from our society. And the way that this is seen, it's because of things like, for example, you go and you see a model or an actress in a TV show and such, you see that they have this really high standard of beauty, and they put this on young girls, and they're like, oh, well, if you don't look like this actress or you don't have this certain body type, you're not really seen as a woman and you aren't desired, and etc., etc. And most of the time, what the media enforces is the sexualization of women, because they're like, oh, you need to have certain implants or dress a certain way in order to attract males and such. And let's say you go out in what society deems to be quote unquote appropriate, you're more likely to actually get harassed or assaulted because of it.
It's always the question, what were you wearing, essentially.
Social media and things of that such affect children especially, and there's also been an increase in the disturbing materials of children targeted towards adults.
Children characters, and people tend to age them up, give them exaggerated bodies in terms of bust areas and all that, even though they're technically minors, but they tend to justify what they're doing by saying they're aged up, or technically canonically they're hundreds of years old, but it's the fact that they look like a child and you're drawing them in these inappropriate ways. It really doesn't make you look good, because in the end it's saying sexualizing a child, essentially. A child image, even if you claim they're not a child, it's still contributing to the fact that it's okay to sexualize these children.
And people try to justify this by saying, oh, but it's just something on the internet, it's just a cartoon, it's just something that isn't real. But if you look at this, most of the cases of child sexual assault result from these media, from these shows that age children up and such.
This stuff on social media obviously contributes to I feel in recent years, through social media, grooming, which obviously can lead to rape and sexual assault on minors. If you don't live under a rock and obviously have been recently in social media, I think most of you know about the whole Mr. Beast situation with Chris Tyson. Okay, I just want to put it out there, allegedly, okay? But basically, Chris Tyson, I believe, on Discord would post these sexualized child pornography, essentially, and even had a commission art of a sexualized child drawing on their wall for anyone in their office to see. And obviously allegations came out that they were grooming and essentially texting minors. So it really just shows how like you were saying, this media just adds fuel to the fire, essentially. Art, it's especially with art, it's they say you can draw anything,
and they say, oh, well, art is subjective, or depending on the audience, but I feel there's some boundaries that have to be respected, especially when it comes to minors.
And I just feel that's so important in this preventative talk that we're having. It's especially with AI now, imagine the power that some of these pedophiles essentially have is they can just ask any device, generate me this drawing, and they could, and that's disgusting, obviously. But I don't know, I just feel when you have access to all this sexualization of children, of women, on social media, and seeing that everyone else agrees to you and to a certain extent, I feel it goes back to the fact that it enables them to do what they want. in real life, I guess. It also can make them lose respect and dehumanize children and women because of all the sexualization, which again can lead to sexual assault, harassment, rape, and all that.
And people can say, oh, well, like, let's say a certain game has a sexualization of women or of children and such. People can argue that, oh, well, like, the tag for the game is people 18 and up. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, it's for older, more mature people, but that doesn't take away the fact that you're sexualizing minors. And that's just...
And I think that's, like, debatably worse if 18 plus, and then it's, like, a game essentially sexualizing children.
And a really recent example of one of these such games that actually had a tag of an intended audience of 12 and up is called No Mercy, a violent and sexually explicit video game which glorified rape and incest, which, first off, shouldn't even be allowed on the platform. And because that platform, Steam, usually has stricter guidelines, I'm very surprised as to how they just let this be. Game encouraged players to own and subdue women whilst instructing them to never take no for an answer. And first off, let's say a person plays this game, typically a male, and he plays this game for a very long time, and he goes outside and he sees a woman, and he can think, oh, well, if the game is basically teaching me that I can own women and like subdue them and such, even though they might not think it like actively in their mind, they're gonna take actions towards this woman to recreate what was happening in the game, which just ultimately leads to this problem to grow even more because you're seeing it everywhere and it's encouraging it.
I'd also like to add that Steam, like the platform in which this game was in, essentially has millions of active users, including small children. And not only that, the game, like Wendy said, was targeted towards essentially children, 12 plus PC gamers. So that's just adding more to what you were saying. Like you said before, children
can be more impressionable and more susceptible to these sort of things because let's say they're, on most cases, they have unsupervised like internet access and they see all of these things. They're more likely to go out in the real world in general and go and do these actions, and people will question, well, why did you do that? Why did you abuse that woman? They're gonna be like, well, I saw it on this game on social media and such.
And it's like its whole promotional material is horrific, if to say the least, essentially saying how like leave no mercy essentially to the women. And like you said, that really just can inspire the wrong audience and enable them to harass innocent women, which makes the problem worse. But a good way that essentially society was able to combat this problem was petitions were signed to remove the game. A petition had been started with over 70,000 people, essentially saying for the game to be banned and purged from all platforms. And it worked, as No Mercy was banned in the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia. They removed the game from Steam, stating that we don't intend to fight the whole world. But this kind of just shows that like as long as like we all come together and just work together and petition, then we can like make a change. And it's a good thing that this game was able to be banned in so many countries, because that way we could like prevent many like of Steam's audiences from reaching the game and just, you know, prevent a lot of bad things from happening. So yeah, I think this also contributes to the fact that by promoting social norms that like essentially go against women, sexualizes them, dehumanizes them, it just contributes more to the problem of sexual assault and violence against them. But I think a good way to like prevent this from happening is by promoting instead social norms that protect against violence and teach skills to prevent sexual violence and empower individuals and communities. With empowerment and solutions is something we will discuss in a later episode. But yeah, by promoting healthy relationships and even providing early childhood education can really make a difference in protecting and preventing these awful scenarios for women. Also, by creating protective environments such as in schools and workplaces, and supporting victims and survivors is also very crucial.
Education can be a really important factor in combating this, because by educating people, they know boundaries and they're gonna know how to treat women with respect, which can ultimately, although seem like a very small thing, it can go a really long way like later on, because with the current state of things, sexual assault of like women is more common now, and like if people got not taught respect at home or in school and such, this can like really bring the number of cases down, maybe even possibly to zero.
Especially like in early stages of life, like obviously in which like obviously children are like maybe elementary school is too young, but I would say middle school, especially when that's like the age you're a little bit more vulnerable and are still like learning not only about the world but about yourself. I think that's like a good place to start in educating, especially like men, or I guess males in this situation, male teenagers, teaching them about respect and respecting women and just people in general can really help in preventing this issue from not only happening but from getting worse.
I think that also by restricting like red pill content, because it talks a lot about like seeing them as objects. I think there's been like a study out, or there's been like an investigation where young males from like the ages 11 to like 16, I believe, the main consumers of this type of content, and since they're really young, they can really like pick up on the behaviors or like that red pill content creators. Younger people tend to watch this, and since they watch it and these children are not supervised by adults as much, they're more likely to take on these behaviors that go against women.
The social norms behind this content isn't exactly anything new, but I feel like social media has been able to like spread more of this like traditional like social norms more easily and faster, like you said, and it's like been able to manifest itself in, like you said, red pill content. And even though it's gonna sound silly, like these alpha male podcasts and all that. And since, like I said, these social norms aren't new, but also I feel like I said, social media has been able to like spread it faster. And I feel like recently it's been more of like a big thing trying to revive these social norms. And it's been able to, I feel like, change a lot of people. I feel like especially men probably didn't like objectify women before and probably treated them like at least with basic respect, but I feel like now that they've been exposed to like this type of content, I feel like they've lost respect for women and they started like believing whatever it is they're hearing through this type of media. And I think an example of this, it's not a specific example, but it's like a story I had heard where essentially this wife felt like her husband wasn't the same anymore, and she didn't understand why. Like, he would get mad at her for not doing the chores around the house and basically subjecting herself to the traditional like wife role. And she later found out that this was due to him like consuming a lot of this red pill content, essentially.
So one of the ways that this type of behavior can be prevented can be with like more parent supervision, and this can especially tie in with educating people, such as like as young as
I feel like 12 or like when they hit puberty. I feel like children are still like vulnerable from that change. Well, at least here in America, from that change from 5th to 6th grade. So I feel like 7th grade is like a good place to start. And at that age, you're like, what? Yeah, 12. So I feel like at that age is like a good age to like educate them.
Education can go a really long way in this, because since they're at a really young age, they're more likely to actually listen to what people have to say. And so when they grow up, they won't actually disrespect women, and instead will actually treat them like human beings instead of all of this type of behavior that we've been seeing lately.
Just like a message to maybe any parent watching this, if at all, but I feel like it's very important to monitor your children. Again, at this age is so important, like making sure like they're not in friend groups that like enable your child to like learn these values of disrespecting and dehumanizing women. And I think that's so important, like monitoring your child to like not be exposed to this like content and these ideals in any way through social media or through friend group. And it's just having these conversations with these discussions with your children. And I think that's so important, because as a parent you can prevent it as young as that age to make sure like your child doesn't go off to eventually grow up and just go assault an innocent woman or child.
So there's a show called Adolescence.
Essentially what happens, and according to this, a family's world turns upside down when 13-year-old Jamie Miller is arrested for murdering a schoolmate. The charges against their son force them to confront every parent's worst nightmare.
And the whole reason why this happened is because this 13-year-old boy started going into online communities that promote misogyny, violence, and a belief that they are inherently inherently disadvantaged by women. And since this kid is like really young, he started consuming the red pill content, which ultimately led him to commit such a violent act towards the girl. And this also shows how society is pressuring these like young children or like soon to be men to act a certain way. If not, oh, you're not a man if you don't this or that, or if your woman doesn't respect you, then you're not a man. And all of these things lead to this mentality in which they have to abuse women in order to gain that respect that they see, even though in reality that is not how you go about doing things. And this can also tie back in how parents need to monitor their children's online activities, especially at a young age, as Jocelyn mentioned earlier, because this could have been avoided if their parents were more present in the kid's life and just, you know, asked him questions about like how he views women, or like if he's ever angered and such, like how he deals with it. And I feel like that could have given them a lot more context on how their child was like acting and how they could have like prevented this from happening towards the girl.
So in the adolescent series, Jamie killed Katie due to a combination of factors, and like Wendy said, the influence of online incel propaganda, but it was also due to his own insecurities and perceived bullying at school. He was also particularly hurt by Katie's public accusation of him being an incel on Instagram, which he felt was a betrayal and fueled his rage, leading to the stabbing. Like I said, he struggled with low self-esteem, he felt unattractive, and he also believed women would only be interested in him if he tricked them, which was also fueled by he was also influenced by, like Wendy said, online misogyny and male supremacy, which further solidified his beliefs and fueled his anger. His anger was also due to the fact that he felt bullied at school and he was hurt by Katie's rejection, which again further reinforced his negative self-image. And just backtracking a bit, the influence of the online media he was consuming, again, all of this ideology just fueled him to stabbing Katie. Essentially what we're trying to say here, parents, just please monitor your children, essentially, and have these conversations with them, because it can prevent a lot of things. I'd like to transition now to a different aspect of prevention. There's an article by the Charlotte Police and Public Safety which states the various ways to reduce the risk of becoming a sexual assault victim. So we will be discussing that. So here it basically says that anyone can be the target of sexual assault, but obviously we've discussed before that women are more likely to be assaulted. But according to this article, there is no stereotypical victim or rapist, but it also says here nearly 85% of all victims of sexual assault knew the person who raped or assaulted them, and often a situation starts off innocent and fun but can be very quickly escalate out of control. So yeah, we're gonna go over these preventative measures. So starting off, it is important to avoid hazardous situations. Sexual assault can occur in any situation, and of course it's never your fault regardless of your circumstances. However, it is important to take such steps as traveling accompanied by someone you know or someone you actually trust, and it's important to avoid alcohol and drugs as you can substantially reduce your risk of being victimized.
Also, you have to be really careful even if you're going out with more people, because let's say you and your friends go to a bar or a club and you all start drinking alcohol and somebody spikes your drink. I feel like there's no point in going in a group if none of the people there are if somebody stays back to watch the whole group and such. So I think it's important to have someone who's watching over the group to make sure that none of this happens.
Yeah, just choose your company wisely, basically, and make sure you're all watching each other's backs and no one's left behind, because I feel like there's so many cases where friends go out, one of them just decides to leave early, and then they usually just horrible things happen.
So another way that you can prevent yourself from being a victim can be by communicating your limits clearly, and this can include things like saying no and being firm on your decision, because if you're not firm on your decision, people can take it as, oh well, she's just indecisive, I can make her change her mind, and all of these things can lead you to be a victim of sexual assault because you're not being assertive in your boundaries and such. And also, if the person who is harassing you, what you can do is tell a trusted adult regardless of your age. Just tell someone, and if you have someone nearby that you can call, or someone that's with you, to make sure that like if you're out like being accompanied and like getting escorted out of the situation in like the best way possible, so that way you don't become part of the statistic. I feel like it can be even harder to combat grooming just because it's a child may not know better, and you may think, oh well, this person is just being nice, or like, oh well, they're just like my first like real friend or something, because I know a lot of people struggle with like friendships and such, and they find comfort in online relationships and such, which later on, once like they get out of the grooming situation, they realize, oh, like I was being used and I didn't like know any better.
Yeah, I think it's worse when it's like in person too, because obviously one thing could lead to another. If you've ever seen those PSAs about sexual abuse, then I would suggest to watch those, because it kind of talks like about grooming and all that, and how it's important to essentially, in order to prevent these, I would just say talk to a trusted adult. In the worst case scenario, it is important to respond physically. Some people simply don't listen or just don't care. So if either person is intoxicated, or that may also complicate the situation, but obviously that's not an excuse for someone to commit sexual assault. If someone is assaulting you and not responding to your objections, you have the right to respond physically, or to physically defend yourself if you feel you can do so. If possible, push the person away, scream no, and say that you consider what the person is doing to be rape. It is understandable that most people instinctively do not respond forcibly to people they know, but remember, it is not your fault if you find that you are unable to do so. You should respond physically by kicking, scratching, poking their eyes out if you have to. Little tip over here, pinch the fat area of their arms. It works. But yeah, basically those methods are a good way to fight back in the worst case scenario. So to finish off, we're going to go over some suggestions that the article provides. So at home, it says, make sure all windows and doors in your home can be locked securely, particularly sliding glass doors. Use the locks. Keep entrances well lighted. Check the identification of any sales or service person before letting them in. If you live in an apartment, avoid being in the laundry room or garage by yourself, especially at night. And if you come home alone and find a door or window open or signs of forced entry, don't go in. Go to the nearest phone and call the police. While walking, be alert to your surroundings and the people around you. Very important to always be aware and alert of your surroundings, even if you feel comfortable, because trust me, it's very valuable to be aware. And stay in well-lit areas as much as possible. Walk confidently at a steady pace on the side of the street facing traffic. Walk closely to the curb. Avoid doorways, bushes, and alleys. If you are in trouble, attract help any way you can. Scream, yell for help, or yell fire. This may attract more people than just screaming other things. And if you feel you're being followed, walk into a store or knock on a house door. And while driving, keep your car in good working order and that the gas tank is at least half full. Park in well-lighted areas and lock the doors, even if you'll only be gone a short time. When you return to your car, have the key ready and check the front and rear seats and floor before getting in. Drive with all the doors locked. Never pick up hitchhikers. If you have a flat tire, drive on it until you reach a safe, well-lit, and well-traveled area. Exercise extra caution when using underground and enclosed parking garages. Try not to go alone. And if you are being followed, don't drive home. Go to the nearest police or fire station and honk your horn. Or drive to an open gas station or other businesses where you can safely call the police. Don't leave your car unless you are certain you can get inside the building safely. Try to obtain the license plate number and description of the car following you. And I want to say a thanks to the Charlotte Police and Public Safety for their article. And just to top it off, many places such as workplaces and college campuses have resources such as defense classes and other programs. Many colleges and universities offer a variety of educational programs geared to prevention, including rape awareness and self-defense. Several of these institutions also offer on and off campus services. But yeah, this marks the end of our discussion and this episode. We hope that you learned something and are more educated and informed of preventative measures.
If you want to help our cause, you can follow our podcast for future episodes. Our next episode will be about the online survival stories of victims of sexual assault, as well as some of your stories, if any.
As always, there will be a link to our Google form in which you can share your own anonymous story, which may be featured in the next episode that we will be releasing. If you are a victim of sexual violence and you feel comfortable doing so, share your story anonymously so we may share it on our podcast. There is a consent form. You may put your name if you want. Obviously, put your story. And if you wish to be a guest on our podcast, then you may provide your main form of contact information. And yeah, overall, thank you for listening again. And stay safe. And yeah, bye.
Bye. And thank you.